If you're planning to visit Bryce Canyon National Park, you probably have loads of questions about what to expect. How many times when planning a trip to a national park have you thought, I wonder what things I should avoid doing in the park? Or how many times at the end of a trip have you thought, gosh, I'd really wish I'd known that beforehand? Well, that's exactly what we're looking at today. There are plenty of videos with Bryce Canyon National Park tips. The thing is that most of it focuses on what you should do when you visit the parks. Today's episode is different. Hi, I'm James Ian, and in today's episode, I'm sharing things not to do. These are the 7 things to avoid when visiting Bryce Canyon National Park and how to avoid them. If you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe right now. If you're watching or listening somewhere else, follow my podcast to get the episodes as they come out. By looking at 7 mistakes that people commonly make, you'll learn exactly how to avoid them so that you won't make the same mistakes. And at the end of the episode, I'll be sharing my number 1 mistake that I've seen people make. And it's not only the most common mistake, it's also the worst mistake that you can make. And I'll share exactly how to avoid it. So be sure to stay to the end. Let's get started.
Welcome to National Parks Collecting with James Ian, the National Park expert. He's here to help you have the best national parks trips ever. Get tips, discover hidden gems, and learn all you need to know. This is your path to collecting national parks experiences, memories, and maybe even a stamp or two.
What's the first mistake that people make when they're planning a trip to Bryce Canyon? A really common mistake is only visiting the Bryce Amphitheater. Now, the Bryce Amphitheater is the heart of the park. This is where you'll find the largest concentration of hoodoos and many of the best views in the park. So if you only have a few hours in the park, then definitely spend your time here. But if you have more time, this is really just scratching the surface of what Bryce Canyon National Park has to offer. There are several other key areas in the park that you really shouldn't miss. If you're looking for other places in the park that will give you just as good, if not better, views, then I would suggest you head to Fairyland. In Fairyland, you'll find secluded outlooks, almost deserted hiking trails, and the epic Tower Bridge, which is a really iconic couple of hoodoos connected. They look like the Tower Bridge in London. Very cool. And while avoiding the crowds that are at the amphitheater. The shuttle bus does not come to this viewpoint, so it's a lot more secluded than the ones that you'll find in Bryce Amphitheater. One of the best places in this section of the park is Fairyland Point. Here, you'll see Fairyland Canyon, which has tons of hoodoos, just like in the amphitheater. Another location other than the amphitheater is Mossy Caves. This is in the northern section of the park and has a completely separate entrance. It's just off the main Highway 12. And there are really beautiful views of the hoodoos there and kind of small but kind of cute waterfall that you can hike to. The nice thing about Mossy Cave is the cave itself is not that exciting, but that area of the hoodoos, you don't need to hike down to be surrounded by the hoodoos. You just hike straight from the parking lot. It's a very easy hike, very simple to do, and really beautiful. Another thing, of course, is the scenic drive. There are plenty of viewpoints along the scenic drive where you can just stop on the side of the road. It's very easy. What's another mistake that I see people make when they're planning a trip to Bryce Canyon? Another mistake is not visiting Zion on the same trip. Now, I know this episode is about Bryce Canyon, but you can drive from Bryce Canyon to Zion in 1.5 hours. They're just 75 miles apart. So you should definitely add on Zion Canyon to the same trip and spend a couple of days exploring Zion. It'd be a real shame not to include that on your Bryce Canyon trip when they're so close. I recommend 3 to 4 days in Zion if you have time, but even if you only have 1 day, it's still totally worth it. Zion has iconic hikes like Angel's Landing and the Narrows, but many other spectacular views and activities. What's another mistake that people often make when they visit Bryce Canyon National Park? A mistake that I have made myself, I'm going to admit, is expecting the weather to be the same or similar in Bryce Canyon to that in Zion. If you've come from Zion and you expect it to be the same in Bryce, you will be a little surprised probably. Although they are very close, assuming that the climate and the weather are the same is a big mistake because Bryce Canyon is at an average elevation of 8,000 feet and gets up to 9,000 feet in some parts of the park, versus Zion, which has an average elevation of just 4,000 feet, which tends to make it about 10 degrees warmer in Zion than it is in Bryce year-round. During the winter, if you're planning to visit in winter, Bryce Canyon is usually totally covered in snow. It's very wintry, whereas Zion does get snow, but it's much more mild. And then in the summer, Bryce Canyon can be about 80, while Zion can reach into the hundreds. It's much hotter. So when you're packing for Bryce, make sure that you're packing for colder or cooler weather, because even in the hottest months of the year, it can still get pretty cold at night. What's something else that people should avoid doing when they visit Bryce Canyon National Parks? I think it's a real mistake to just stick to the rim of the Bryce Amphitheater. I see people just going straight from the shuttle or their parking to the rim, take a couple of pictures and then leave, maybe go to a few other viewpoints, maybe walk along the easy section of the rim trail. If you're able, and I know that not everybody has the mobility, but if you do, I really recommend hiking down the canyon. Seeing the hoodoos up close and all around you just gives you a whole other perspective and appreciation of this incredible place. It also allows you to see some of the more famous formations like Thor's Hammer or Queen Victoria up close than what you'll see from the rim. My favorite hike is the Queen's Garden and Navajo Loop Trail. It's just kind of amazing. It takes you right down into the heart of the canyon, and you can see the hoodoos up close. They're all around you. It's very cool. The total distance of this hike is only 3 miles, and it's just a few hundred feet of elevation gain, but it is down and then up again, so you do need to have mobility. I recommend if you do this particular hike that you do it in a clockwise direction, because this gives you the best views going down the Queen's Garden Trail. And then you can come up either the Wall Street or the Two Bridges side of the Navajo Loop Trail. Also, keep in mind that hiking down into the canyon does mean that you're going to have to come back up. So make sure that you're prepared to do this. It can be kind of steep on the ascent. Mossy Cave Trail that I mentioned earlier is another trail that gives you amazing views from a different perspective, much easier, actually. Before we look at my other mistakes to avoid in Bryce Canyon National Park, if you're watching this on my @National Parks Collecting YouTube channel and you haven't already, please like and subscribe below. It really does help. What's another mistake that can really impact your trip to Bryce Canyon National Parks? A mistake that I see people make is staying too far away. A problem that a lot of people have at many national parks is just not knowing where to book accommodation. You need to book accommodation not just near the national park, but near the main entrance to the national park or inside. The best place to stay while visiting Bryce Canyon is either inside the park or in Bryce Canyon City, which lies just outside the one and only entrance to the park. There's a few different options there. Inside the park, there's a couple of campgrounds and there's one lodge. The lodge at Bryce Canyon, it's called, and it's an amazing place to stay if you can. But if you can't, Bryce Canyon City is just a 5-minute drive to the entrance and is the first shuttle stop. So you can easily get the shuttle from there into the park. Another option is Tropic, which is about a 20-minute drive away, not quite as convenient. The most popular place to stay in Bryce Canyon City, just outside the park, is Ruby's Inn. It's a Best Western. And they have motel-style accommodation, cabins, a campground. It's a huge complex. And there's a link in the show notes below. Make sure that you book your hotel at least 3 to 6 months in advance because they do fill up quickly, even though Ruby's is pretty big. To get in and around the park, as I mentioned earlier, you can take a free shuttle in the busy season. There's plenty of stops. It loops around the main Bryce Amphitheater section of the park. It doesn't go to the Scenic Drive. It doesn't go to Fairyland, and it doesn't go to Mossy Cave. But you can see the main section of the park using the shuttle, and it will save the hassle of getting parking. What's another mistake that people often make when they visit Bryce Canyon National Park? Well, there's a lot to do in Bryce Canyon, so a very common mistake I see people make is not having a detailed and flexible, of course, plan. I have one more mistake to reveal, so stay to the end to hear that. But before we do, let me explain what I mean about having a plan. With Bryce Canyon being so popular and having so many things to do, having a plan is really essential. Even though it's not that big, this is not a park to just wing it. There are so many different lookout spots and there's hikes to do there that doing some research ahead of time is really important. The problem is that all these details can be hard to find in one place, and planning a trip to a place like Bryce can be overwhelming, even though it really will make your trip so much better. In fact, the number one thing that people ask me about is how to put everything together into an actual itinerary. They worry that they'll miss out on something really cool. They worry that they'll be somewhere when everyone else is in the same place and spend most of the time waiting around to get a parking spot or competing with crowds on the trail. Some of them are traveling with their whole family or friends and stressing about how to keep everybody happy. If you'd really like some help with your planning, I've created super detailed 1- and 2-day itineraries for Bryce Canyon. Just click on the link in the notes below, and it will take you to a page that explains more. But let's have a quick walkthrough now. They have a park overview, plus for each day, a detailed breakdown of what to do. I've also included different options for different activity levels. So, for example, there might be an option for a long hike and at exactly the same time, another option for the same part of the park that involves no or very little hiking. They include driving directions and maps, hiking trail descriptions and maps, tips, timings, warnings of things to watch out for or pay attention to, etc. There are different itineraries available for 1 day and for 2 days. They'll help take away the overwhelm and give you all the information that you need in one spot so that you don't need to worry about missing out on the highlight of the park or stress about how to put everything that you want to do into a schedule that makes the most sense. Just follow the link in the show notes below. Of course, you need to be flexible with your plan and have backups in case trails are closed or if there's some kind of extreme weather that blocks off part of the park. This way you'll get the most out of your trip while being able to relax and not just fly by the seat of your pants. Now, as promised, what's the number one mistake that people make when visiting Bryce Canyon? And how can you avoid it? Well, the number one mistake I think that people make is getting a late start. Bryce Canyon isn't as popular as nearby Zion, but it's also smaller. And because it sits at a much higher elevation, the peak season here is shorter. This means that it can get crowded. So if you get a late start, you'll find yourself on crowded hiking trails. You might find yourself circling parking lots, waiting for a space to open up, or waiting in a long line for the shuttle. It's much better to get a very early start, grab a parking spot, hike the trails when there are fewer people there and the light is nicer, and then relax later in the day. If you want help planning your trip, check the links in the description box below. There's a bunch of planning and booking resources that you can use to plan and book your trip. And keep watching my videos to get even more help so that you can have the best national parks vacation ever. And if you want to get notified about the next episode, subscribe and click below.